The school year had progressed, and it was now May. Alpha Featherwind had been mostly quiet as he needed her able to travel, which she currently couldn't to the extent he would need her to. Instead, he would help her and Leo list all of the packs she would need to go to. She had also moved to Leo's room at the pack house, and they had become official mates. Celeste had been correct that the full effects of the mate bond would hit her after mating. When they were apart, it was like there was a string that became stretched and would tug at her heart until they were back together. It wasn't painful, but it was an annoyance. Celeste explained that you get used to it, and it won't feel so noticeable after a while. It was now time for the survival class finale. Aaron and Leo woke up snuggled together to the alarm going off. Leo grumbled, and Aaron giggled at his grumbles. He gave her a last squeeze before getting up and turning off the alarm and retrieving her leg brace. The pack house had multiple showers, so he headed off to one while she headed off to another. They had already received their info sheet for their final, and Aaron suspected they were headed back to the desert. She had asked Alpha Featherwind about it, but he just smiled and left. They had decided to dress in light layers so that they would be able to put something over their heads to keep the sun off during the day. They both also slathered on as much sunscreen as they could, as it wouldn't count as them bringing anything with them. Leo grumbled as it covered much of Aaron's natural scent. After they were prepared, they headed to the food court and made sure to eat and drink a lot of water to help stave off hunger and thirst for as long as they could. They headed to the room everyone was leaving from and waited their turn. Within the hour, they had been transported to a familiar desert.
Alpha Featherwind did this, didn't he?
Leo stated.
There's no way we could end up here twice without intervention. You saw the look some of the teachers were giving us, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure they know they have been meddled with.
So which way is the pack?
Aaron asked.
That's right. You were unconscious last time. We started in that direction.
He pointed.
But the ley line had me going in that direction.
He pointed again.
Can you see the ley line?
Aaron asked.
No, but I think if we head in this angle, we should encounter it, and then we can just follow it.
He released his hawk totem.
Hawk will scout ahead for us.
They drank as they walked, unworried about running out of water. After a few hours, Leo spotted the ley line. They adjusted their course and continued. It was dusk when Hawk alerted Leo that the pack was ahead.
Should we rest the night or continue?
Leo asked. He knew her hip had to be aching by now.
Let's keep going. It's only a few hours and we can sleep in a bed tonight.
Okay, but let's rest for a little bit, and you eat the last of the jerky.
Fine, fine,
she replied. They rested for about an hour and then headed back out. After another hour and a half of walking, he had them stop.
This is the edge of their territory. I need to call out to them to let them know a non-pack member wishes to enter their lands.
He had her cover her ears before he howled as loud as he could. After a few moments, there were return howls letting him know he was heard, and someone was coming out to meet him. A few minutes later, they could hear the hoofbeats of the approaching pack.
Leo and Aaron, it's good to see you again, but how did you manage to get sent here a second time?
One of the men said. Full night had fallen, and Alpha Featherwind appeared next to Aaron.
It was my doing. It's time for her to meet with Petro and Lorena Mendoza, and then to speak with your dead.
They're finally ready?
Leo asked.
What are you two talking about?
Aaron asked.
Alpha Featherwind told me back when we fought the Spectre that someone named Mendoza might be able to heal you, but they weren't ready yet, and to not seek them out because they weren't ready then. When we were here for the midterm, they mentioned that they were working on a new method of healing that combines mage and werewolf magics. They didn't want to raise your hopes if they were going to fail.
Come, let's get you two fed, and you can speak to Pedro and Lorena tomorrow morning.
The next morning, they got up to have breakfast, and Rosa had invited Pedro and Lorena to the main house for the meal.
It's good to see you again.
Lorena remarked.
finally gave in to the bond, I see.
You were right, and I didn't even have to smack him.
Impressive.
Pedro replied. After they finished eating, they asked Erin if she was ready, and when she replied in the affirmative, they took her outside. Lorena directed her to a bench to wait on while they prepared the space. Some people came out with drums and set up in a circle, while Pedro and Lorena made sure the space was clear of anything that might cause them to trip. Once the space was cleared, a cot was brought out to the center and Lorena waved Erin over.
Remove your leg brace and lay down. You understand that werewolves exist within Paradox. That's why when they shift from one form to another, it can cause madness if a human views it. When they dance their traditional dances, different energies are created. This will be a Pascola dance. It's usually not done at this time of year, but it has the right kind of energy we need. We tested it, and the time of year doesn't change the strength of the magic. I'll be combining it with Time Arcane. Usually, you can only move time forward, or pause it. Because of their paradox, I'll be able to move time backwards on your injuries and move them back to before your accident. I'm going to go take your cane and brace over to Leo for you. Just relax. As the energy rises, you may see things, but don't worry. Nothing will harm you here.
She left, and when she came back, she knelt down on Erin's left side. A few minutes later, men came out in masks and regalia and took their positions. The drums started first, and then the chanting soon after. Then she could hear the movement of the dancers. After a few minutes, even Erin could feel the raising of magic all around them. Erin looked over to Lorena, and she was glowing with magical power. Erin felt the need to close her eyes. Seeing the magic and feeling it was overwhelming, but closing her eyes helped. Lorena began her work on Erin's eye, then moved to her shoulder, and last was her hip. The healing ceremony lasted several hours, and when it was done, Lorena, Pedro, and the other dancers needed to be helped back to the sidelines to rest. Leo came over to Erin and helped her to sit up. When she opened her eyes, he saw that her left was no longer pale with blindness. The scars all remained, but the eye behind it was healed.
How are you feeling?
Leo asked. Erin rolled her shoulder.
Strong, like I was before. I want to stand.
He helped her to stand, and she moved her hip around, testing it.
It's like it never happened.
She moved away from Leo and took a few more steps unaided and laughed with the joy of it. Erin walked over to where everyone was resting.
I don't know how to thank you.
Pedro chuckled.
You're going to bring back the strength of the New Moon Wolves. That is payment enough, and even beyond what we did for you. You have no idea what this will do for the people.
There were many nods of agreement. They continued to rest and chat with the pack members until night fell. Leo and Erin started out towards where they had met Maria, and as they walked, Alpha Featherwind appeared next to them, walking with them.
You had to be healed first, or some of the dead may have rejected you. Even dead and about to fall into oblivion, some are just stubborn. It's the oldest with the most knowledge and are the most needed. Otherwise, I would have let them fall for their stupidity.
At the edge of the territory of the dead, they met Maria.
Take us to Hiahi.
Featherwind commanded. Hiahi means night wind in Yoime.
He is beginning the fade. You are too late.
She replied.
We are not. Take us to him.
She decided to humor them and lead them to a very ancient-looking wraith, dressed with the regalia of a medicine man. He was kneeling at his burial place, and he flickered.
You must hurry.
Featherwind whispered to Erin. She nodded and knelt next to the wraith. She placed her hands on the dirt in front of her and felt down into the ground. It was the tiniest sliver of bone that was left. It was fragile feeling. Erin began to do as Jeremiah had taught her, and felt for all of the leached calcium from the bones and pulled it back into the shard of bone, giving it enough strength to be pulled from the earth. She then gently pulled it free and then wove the protective magic wards around the bone that was smaller than her pinky. The wraith next to her spoke.
I was on the edge of oblivion. Why have you saved me?
It's not your time yet, Hayahi. I have a job for you.
Featherwind replied.
You are very far from your packlands, Alpha Featherwind, and the coffin paths are unusable. You are this child's servant?
Partner is a better word. We are going to find all of the new moon wolves that are like us, and this necromancer will pair you with students to teach. Come into contract with her so that she can facilitate this for the people.
Featherwind replied.
Will you do this?
After a few minutes, Hiahai nodded. Erin had gathered the items she would need from the pack house with Rosa's permission before they had come out to the dead. She set everything up and performed the rite with Hayahi.
Are there any more new moon wolves here?
Erin asked Hiahi.
No, I was the last here. At least the last that has any of the old knowledge. New moon wolves have become rarer over the years. You will find that most packs only have 1 or 2 living new moon wolves, and many of us that are dead fall into oblivion quicker than our companions. The newer of their dead have less of the disciplined strengths as they enter into death. This translates into weaker wraiths. It's hard to explain to a living non-wolf.
I think I understand. Fewer life skills within your moon discipline in life will make you have a weaker connection to your anchors in death.
Erin chuckled.
You forget this is my discipline in life.
He gave a small chuckle of recognition, and they soon parted ways. Hayahi would awaken the next night near one of his anchors. Either his remaining bone or Erin herself, as the contract they had made, was now an additional anchor and would be able to travel between them if there was any distance between them. He would be otherwise able to travel as he wished during the night.
Hey everyone, hope you loved the video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe for more awesome sci-fi content. You can also support us by hitting the thanks button or becoming a channel member. Your generosity helps us bring you more stellar stories. Every bit counts. Thanks a bunch.